Welcome back to this next episode of the State of Affairs. I have a splendid panel today. All the three women from the three different domains presently, but then mostly connected to the education when it comes to gender and gender studies and politics and international relations. I would like to thank you all, firstly, for accepting our invitation to come and join us and participating in this podcast. The second thing is that I'll introduce the guests first. We have with us Professor Sheetal Sharma. She's a professor from JNU School of International Relations. I'll attach the brief introduction about her with this podcast. Then we have with us Vatsala Srivastava. She also works for Women for Politics. It's a policy think tank. She will be joining SWAS London very soon. I assume that. And then we have with us Hardeep Kaur. She's also an outstanding student of gender and politics. She's a writer and has her post graduation in the gender and politics, in gender studies rather. So before crashing into the session, I would like to open it up with the initial remarks. We'll be talking broadly in two parts for this. Will broadly be dealing about what does it mean when it comes to gender, politics, and IR. I'll go to Professor Sheetal Sharma, but first of all, I'd make a slight introduction about the topic. If we look women in politics and women in IR conceptually, there are different schools of thoughts, especially within the feminism umbrella that talk from the liberal, from the radical, from the post-liberal, from the constructive, from the critical theorists, from the post-modern theorists, from the post-colonial theorists, actually, who especially represent the feminist straitjacket. And they have been talking about women in IR. There is no specific theory about women and IR, but then they have their different variants when we talk about feminism. The goal of this discussion will be to enlighten the students and the viewers about what does this topic pertain to, what are the issues with women, how authors, scholars, and political analysts have dealt with this thing, that how do we decipher this sort of gender and international relations as an area of study. So I'll run down to Professor Sheetal Sharma for the initial remarks. Over to you.
Mehraz, as you have mentioned, the topic of today's discussion is gender, politics, and IR. Now, this is very interesting to see that IR happens to be one of the component of politics, politics which is happening globally at the international level. And when we talk of international relations, we are talking about the relation between states, the nation states, or whatever you can say, regions between countries, and how we are going to move about in the direction of establishing cordial relationship between nation states or other countries and regions. Now, how is gender appearing in all this? Or where is gender? Now, it is very interesting that we have titled this particular discussion only as gender, politics, and IR. But if you take my opinion on this particular aspect related to gender, in fact, gender has been cutting across all the disciplinary boundaries. I can give you example from management sciences. I can give you example from political science, sociology, history, no matter whatever you talk about, medical sciences, from theory, that is understanding the discipline to the practice of the discipline, such as medical sciences, engineering, legal profession, and all that. Gender happens to be one of the very critical component for analysis. And why it happens to be very critical component for analysis? Because modern understanding of disciplines tend to look like gender neutral, however, they are very gendered. What do I mean by this? That somehow during the emergence of these disciplines, and specifically if you say IR, where are women? You don't tend to see them. Where do you see them? Where do you observe them? What is their role? What is their function? How much are they contributing? What is their percentage in the total affairs of international affair? How do we perceive gender? We are trying to project an image that everything is fine. On the surface of it, there is calm. On the surface of it, there is a kind of gender neutral perception or an image or optics thrown to the audience or to the people. even we as students of international relations, we hardly tend to question that what is happening in the corridors of power. Where do we see women? We are hardly seeing them. We are hardly trying to acknowledge, gauge, map the kind of contribution these women are making. So they perceived in this gender neutral sense, but actually all these disciplines in general and IR in particular is androcentric in nature. Because if you look the political representation of women, it is less than men. If you look at the head of the states, they are less than men. If you look at the male bureaucrats and number of female bureaucrats, male are more in number. If you look at the top echelons of bureaucracy, policy making, diplomacy, that is all dominated by men. If you look at the response of the state, this is also gendered. There is a default understanding of male experience which has been generalized over both the sexes. And women in this entire process, because IR is traditionally a masculine discipline, it is androcentric, as I just said. It deals with issues of nationalism, sovereignty, chauvinism, display of valor, anger, war, something to crush, dominate, because that's how states are related to one another. There is always a constant tussle for having a higher ranking than the other one. So how do you assume that higher ranking? You tend to dominate, and domination is tend to be seen as a male characteristic. So what are female doing there? Female is perceived as requiring protection, care, to be kept safe from foreign invasion. All these kind of ideas are there inherent. And somehow, very beautifully, we have never been able to identify that there is so much of distortion, so much of flaw in the narrative that we present, which is considered to be not acknowledging at all the kind of asymmetry or the kind of disservice we are doing to the 50% of humanity. And that is why I would say that either political science or IR, sociology, management sciences, all are seemingly objective, seemingly symmetrical, seemingly neutral. However, they are highly distorted and gender biased.
Thank you for the initial remarks, Professor. There is largely a consensus at the bottom line. Whosoever feminist brand one subscribes to or one actually assigns to, that the gender perspective. If we talk about international relations as a field of study, it's mostly statist narrative from the realist lens. It's mostly idealist narrative from the liberal lens, and then we have some people who have Marxist lens to use Marxist lens to understand the gender thing from the historical materialist perspective. But then the bottom line still remains that there is a need for revision of the theories of this statist narrative that we have at the stage that we actually use to understand the politics at the international level or international relations. But then we'll get back to you on the international political economy, the income gap between the two genders. I'll go to straight Vatsala Srivastava for your initial remarks on the subject.
First, I would like to thank Mehraz for inviting us and opening up this discussion for all of us. And we have Professor Sharma, who is again, she is the authority and expertise has the expertise here. I am somebody who is a student and who is trying to explore IR as a subject right now. So I don't really essentially have an academic degree. It is based on the personal experiences or professional experiences that I've had over the period of time. I've worked for UNESCO and Bournemouth universities on India's one of the largest reporting of sexual violence against women. So based on all those things, and also I wanted to share an anecdote. So recently, this is not off the topic. I want to assure you all. I was looking for my master's courses in IR. In colleges abroad, and I was trying to look into their curriculums and modules and everything. And one thing I noticed is that IR, as ma'am said earlier, is essentially like, forgive me if I'm not sounding politically correct or something. It is what I observed personally is that it is essentially male dominated, white dominated. It is mostly Eurocentric in its approach. There are many Western thinkers that have been there. And even when we talk about region specific areas, like, we have South Asia, we have Middle East, there also we, like ma'am said, that there are distortion of history. And in a way, the gendered effect of violence, of war, of militarization has not been narrated in a way which can be called women centric, because there are no women authors there, right? There are journalists who have narrated all these things on the of the war correspondents who have narrated these things, but we get a very, like, a very distorted glimpse of it in that way. And I think when I was looking at the modules in mostly in the European universities, I saw that there are essentially there is a lot of emphasis and focus on war and militarization, and things like feminism, or body autonomy, or sexual politics, queer narratives. These things are essentially missing in those things. So I felt that was, again, like, really, I felt out of touch in a certain way. I was expecting it to be more inclusive in that way. Maybe we have theories like the critical theory of IR, where I personally believe my interest is that I want to look at things from a non-Eurocentric approach. I want to look at things from a non-colonial perspective. I want to look at things in terms of constructivism and all these things that goes around it. And I've been fascinated with women leaders like Sushma Swaraj. We have Indira Gandhi. We have diplomats like Nirupama Rao, and Arundhati Ghosh, Vijay Lakshmi Pandit, who have been pioneers in their own way, and we can look up to them. I wanted to put forth a question for ma'am, and also for the other panelists, and for Mehraz as well. There's something that has been bothering me for a really long time when it comes to South Asia. Can we also have something called a South Asian feminist theory, or something like that? And I would like to, like, if this goes into discussion, I would like to especially know the views of, Professor Sharma that way. So,
Sure,
yeah.
sure. I'll get back to Professor Sharma on that. But then, to my limited understanding, since I'm also a student of international relations, but then
Right.
I'll try to capitalize on that. See, having a South Asian perspective on the feminist theory as a theory from the South Asian side, it's not bad an option if you understand it, if you work on that. Because you were largely talking about postmodernist and post-colonial perspective of feminism.
Yeah.
So you are right within your own domain, within your own rights to understand and develop on that.
I feel that there are many research gaps that needs to be filled. I mean, I hope I'm not wrong. And I also wanted to
that's what postmodernists mostly think of, ask about, that you cannot have people staying in the cozy chambers of London and somewhere else in the West and then talk about feminism in the East or somewhere in the
That's
African
why I
front.
think I chose SOAS, because it had a very niche approach towards
absolutely. It's more an objective analysis of the topic of any field of area in research. I'll go to Hardeep for your initial remarks on the topic. You aren't audible. You aren't audible, Hardeep. Okay. Are we audible to you, Hardeep?
Can I?
Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yeah. Here you go.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Mehraj, first of all, for inviting me for this discussion. So basically, I come from a gender studies background, so I don't have really, no insight about international relations. But when it comes to politics and women in politics especially, I don't see women in politics, but politics around women, because women bodies are mainly used to play politics on the international level. If we see, basically what they do with the, I agree with Miss Sheetal, ma'am, because she said that we have portrayed, certain things in such a way that it seems like the woman is in power, that woman is dominating certain area of politics, but it is completely untrue and false, because women are not dominating. It's just a perception, an illusion that that has been created by us, by all of us. and women bodies and women now in the first place is being used to play a politics on the international level, or for the protection for say, or for for the foreign currencies to come in in our world or in our section or in our countries. So in that manner of fact, if I say where women stand in the politics, then I would say nowhere, because women still play at the background of it. Women is not in a front row where she can take her own decisions, or she can come out with her own point of view, because all the point of views she put on is by manipulated by the man most of the time. So my take on it, am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, so my take on that question that you have asked is that I can't see women in the politics at all.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for putting up your perspective. Actually, this is not a story of total doom and gloom. I reckon reason being that we are not living in the 19th century when Wollstonecraft wrote that fine book.
It's no
I guess
problem.
it's named as Sexual Politics. But then we have been able to move the needle from that point, and we have seen even yesterday or day before yesterday, we have a cabinet reshuffle, and we have seen a list of women, taking to the cabinet and making it to the cabinet rather.
We
So
have 11 women ministers who've
yeah,
taken up.
obviously.
Yeah.
So I'll go to Professor Shitu for the question that what's raised, that is it a possibility that there will be a South Asian perspective to this feminist theory in international relations? A. B. I would like you to extrapolate on the basic premise that all of this boils down to one thing, that there is a public-private divide between when the feminists view it from whatever the lens they want to. These two things, I would like you to deal with them and make us understand what do you think about them. You have muted yourself.
Has raised a very interesting question, which I'm, going to address many a times, and I have done it in past also. A large number of students are always coming up, and I would say bright and intelligent students, just like Vatsala, you and Hardeep. They are always in a quest of that. Yes, what we are learning is all the Western perspective, Eurocentric perspective. And is there any possibility of developing an Indian school of thought, Indian sociological theory, or Indian perspective of IR, or South Asian perspective of women? It's very interesting and very challenging. It's doable also. I tell you why. This is not happening, but it will happen soon in future. Now, let us go beyond understanding something which is right in the center, in the contemporary times. Let us look at the trajectory of emergence of modern disciplines. Say, for instance, when we talk of medicine, we talk of Ayurveda. We say that Ayurveda was far more successful in the past, and we had a very elaborate kind of medical system in history. Medicine. There's a lot of disturbance from Hardeep's side.
I have put her on mute. So
Put her on mute, yes. So we tend to compare that, even in political science, when we talk of democracy is a new concept, but India had democracy long back, and we tend to just in classical political science theory, we tend to relate it to Greece, and then suddenly there is a long gap of centuries, and then we jump to the period 1500 century, Enlightenment and beyond, and this is. Now, why this has happened? Why somewhere we have lagged in terms of producing something as Indian version of any theory, or lacking in terms of South Asian version of feminism? There's nothing wrong about it. But what has happened that in the last 200 years, somewhere the Western people, and particularly the European societies, they took a lead in this race of development of anything, particularly I would say intellectual ideas. And the reason for that is the kind of philosophical and social intellectual revolutions that happened in Europe. And this enlightenment, which I would call as a package of enlightenment, it started questioning, it started developing scientific understanding, perspective, and anything that was taken for granted in general about society, about nature, that was replaced by something which is very objective, experimentable, scientifically proven, and fact-based. So there was a kind of shift from belief to knowledge. There was a shift. And this was fantastic, because if I say that I spoke to God yesterday night, you may not believe me. But if I say that I have temperature, I can put an instrument in my mouth and show you that, okay, I am running down with temperature. So there is a kind of process of experimentation which has gone into development of corpus of knowledge. Now, the same gets applied to all the disciplines. You look at management theories, we might have been managing something better than others in past, but what is the scale when it came to the mass production level, mass consumption level? The Western theories were far more successful in penetrating our worldview because they were packaging the content in a very successful manner. Say, for instance, I give you another example: the humble jaggery that we eat. It might have a lot of good contents in it. It might have been very good for us, but the way it is packaged, you will not go for it if it is being sold on a kiosk or on a trailer with number of flies hovering over it, as compared to as a very unhealthy kind of chocolate or any other stuff which comes in a very good package, mentions that this is the calorific value, this is how it is manufactured, this was when it was expiry. So you go according to scales and standards, and this has set the norm. Now the tone has been set. So what happened, that whatever Western perspectives were there about democracy, about management, about IR, about feminism, all those were brought into practice here also. This is partially because of colonialization, partially because of lack of coherent development of corpus of knowledge existing in discrete cultures. You're very right. When the postmodernists, they tend to criticize the meta narratives, they say that many narratives, the smaller cultures, the local cultures, they have to be given the acknowledgement, the kind of worth that they have, the content, because the meta narratives, the grand narratives are bulldozing. They are somehow crushing the worth, the value of all the mini cultures. So, but in order to have that voice, they have to rise in a proportion. It has to be a critical mass to overthrow it and challenge it. That is why we say that somehow our versions of theories are not coming up, but they will come over a period of time when we gain that kind of substantive grounding. The second issue is about why gender, particularly in Asian. Vatsala, Mehraz, Hardeep, it's not just in South Asia. South Asia might have got a different kind of composition or a cultural matrix, which is a mosaic, multicultural, multilingual, amazing kind of diversity you have. Still, such a kind of synergy between Ganga Jamna's, tehzeeb and Sanskriti and culture, and amazing, beautiful. I would say I would appreciate the kind of diversity that we have in South Asia. No other country or region can imagine. But gender, no matter you are talking about Africa, no matter you're talking about Americas, Europe, Asia, South Asia, East Asia, or the Oceanic, gender happens to be across the spectrum one important problem. Just like coronavirus, the virus is there, its variants may vary all across the world, but the virus is still there, very deadly, very fatal for our existence. So gender is going to be there. And during your interaction, Meraz, you mentioned about various strands of feminism: liberal feminism, radical feminism, Marxism, post-colonial, and all these black feminism. Now, nowhere these are considered to be as proper solution finding kind of a package. What they are interpretations of reality, and then they are interpretations of causes of this problem, and then they are trying to propose a set of solutions to overcome this. But in all this matrix, in all this exchange of dialogue, one thing essentially remains at the bottom or at the root of the cause of gender inequality is the patriarchy. And that is why what Hardeep was saying, that this masculinity, this is something where you have to, and whereas you also brought it, the private and the public. This, there are defined notions of patriarchy. ये दिखना चाहिए, this must be hidden. So क्या दिखना चाहिए? My grace, my dignity, my dominance, my valor, my prestige, all this has to come out. Who are the carriers of prestige? The people, those who hold the power sword. Okay. And who are these people? They step out. What do women do? They just do some puja. They just pray for them in the background. So that private public divide, no matter what culture you're talking about, not what community, what caste, what religion, or wherever in the world, the distinction between these two domains, that is what is observable, has to go out, moving out, external, available, is different from something hidden timid, has to be kept safe, secure. So that kind of patriarchal mindset. And in fact, our patriarchy, my family, I would say anybody's family, your family, Vatsla's family, Hardeep's family, family of any of the audience. I request audience to imagine this, what I'm saying right now. My family gets reflected even at the international level, the kind of relationships that we have in our family. So imagine your family as a group of 5 nation states, and look at the way the international politics is unfolding itself at international level. So what is global is just a reflection of regional. What is regional is just a reflection of a nation, and what is nation just a reflection of sub-regions, and sub-regions are reflections of your family only. So
Yeah,
this is how we have to see it. Yes.
wonderfully put, Professor. Then you have clarified all the things. You have actually tried to link this from the individual analysis to the status theories, and this theory at the level of national level, and then we have at the global level. It's a reflection of one thing, that patriarchy is same throughout wherever you go. But then the issue with the subcontinental mindset, as in the aptitude for the research, is that most often people just quote still the Eurocentric journals, the Eurocentric newspapers, the Eurocentric mindset, the post-colonial mindset. Will say it is that yes, if New York Times, for instance, says that this is black and this is white, no matter if it's absolutely inverse, and then still will claim that it's black and white because New York Times has quoted it. And in the recent issue with that it has advertised something like there is a post for journalism, and specifically it had mentioned that the reporter or the journalist has to look after this basic fact that the present dispensation in India at the central level is not that way good. It's communal, this and that. But then to each his own. Down the line, Watsla, you mentioned rightly that there has to be a South Asian perspective. But until and unless the tools and techniques, if we benefit from the Eurocentric model of understanding the things, that's okay. But believing in their version of research or their version of truth may not be good to the postmodernists, that the way you look at it. From Watsla, I would like to have your say on this fact, that why you want to have a South Asian perspective to the feminism and gender and international relations, or gender and politics rather.
I think not just South Asian. I'll be very India specific as well. I'd say we need a Indian feminist, foreign policy as well at the same time. I don't want to sound like a radical feminist or something, because maybe I'm including the term feminism everywhere. You see, take for an example, we have panel discussions and debates like we are having one right now. There are 3, women who are in the panel, and you are handling it. Generally, when we talk about IR, when we talk about any, sub parts of IR, be it defense, security, terrorism, and other facets, the hardcore subjects or themes which ma'am has put, the masculine ones, like war, militarization, and nuclear energy, and as compared to other issues which are considered to be soft issues, and women are, and it is assumed that, oh, it's about feminism, it's about gender, then this girl or this woman or this female scholar must have an opinion on it, because it's related to them, it's related to her, it's based on gender. In what I was trying to say earlier is that we have seen these political, we have seen these panels where we see that they're all based off men, mostly white men, mostly old scholars, who are and in the recent past there has been a term called the manels, if you guys have heard. There's a term called manel where people are talking about issues which are essentially related to women, but they are being headed or chaired essentially by men. There is no say for maybe people from the trans community or women as such. So those things are there. And South Asia in general, there are so many different diversities, as ma'am mentioned earlier, but there is something that binds us together, the Indian subcontinent, right? And I have also been inspired by the works of Amrita Basu. and Cynthia and Loy. And I feel that I think now is the time that we have more and more number of, see, there have been so many, women graduates who are from the political science background, but how many of them are actually, able to make a way for themselves in the academia? Like how many of them are actually they pave their path to be in the upper echelons of academia, to create something for themselves, and of course, as Mehraj said, that it is not wrong to get inspired, from the Eurocentric approach, or get inspired from the Western thinkers. We have been doing it all along, but if there is something which is different from, the sort of, जिसको हम हिंदी में कहते हैं लीक से हटके, so I don't think so there would be anything wrong in that as well.
So it's not about league se hatke. It's not. See, I have met most of the PhD students or even the postdoc students.
Yeah.
There is a basic problem with the way we actually conduct research without any, offending anybody, without being derogatory to the people who have put lots of efforts into their research. The problem with schools like, the schools that we have when it comes to research is that we just try to build upon the theoretical endeavor, mostly emphasizing the theoretical part of it, because then it's easy to be armchair feminist. It's easy to tom words like patriarchy, male chauvinism, and other stuff. It's easy to call for harsh anti-rape laws. Okay, to each his own or to each her own. Down the line, we still lack one thing. That's the problem-solving approach. We don't need people who will be philosophizing every goddamn thing so that it's for the sake of the philosophy or the literature. We have to have understanding of the topic and come up with a sort of a problem solving aptitude and approach, so that things won't be this way in the next decade. Because the primary endeavor of any enterprise in education is to understand the things and contribute your part to it. We are not the only people who are talking about gender and international relations. There are a lot of people who are talking about it. Yeah. People even have research on this field, most of the people. But then the problem with our schools also is that, since you are talking that we lack one thing, the Indian and the subcontinental perspective to feminism or gender and IR, but still you are going to London for the understanding of this thing, because you consider yourself that it's not, it's a problematic thing to be here and use tools and techniques and just fly over to London. So basically we have not arrived. So. Hold on.
Yeah.
We have not arrived at a level where things will be in a way जहाँ पे हम कह सकते हैं कि नहीं, okay, अब हमारा cross cutting और absolutely outstanding level of analysis है, so it would have been an okay thing, but we'll gradually develop that thing. I'll go to Hardeep for.
I just wanted to say one thing. Like, it also depends on personal experiences as well, right? I had certain experiences that were, in my personal life that forced me towards, that took me towards, I won't say forced me, took me towards, feminism and gendered and issues related to it. And when you are doing a research, it's of course you want to contribute to the academia, you want to maybe prove a point, you want to derive something out of it. It's just that people who come from the marginalized background, in which I include women as well, I include trans people as well, they have their own stories and they have their own narratives, right? Just looking at it through one, and also the fact that you mentioned that problem solving. Yes, that is important. But unless and until we don't talk about it, we don't write about it, we don't speak about it, we don't discuss it like this, nothing can be done. Like, problem solving approach will also come when you recognize, when you realize,
there is an issue with everything that we have, but then down the line,
when you consider this a problem, that there is a lack of representation of women or South Asian women.
It's not only women who have been talking about women empowerment and gender-based perspective about IR, or be that politics or society or anything. Right. Even men have contributed to that.
Sure.
I'll go to Hardeep for what made you say that or claim that there is a need that the politics that we have, it's deficient of women in it. It doesn't mean real empowerment. How do you add upon that? You are again not audible with your headphones.
Am I audible now?
Yeah. Go.
Yeah, okay. So the thing that have made me say that ki politics mein there's no women or women, even the women who are in power actually are not in power. So, I'll just come up with some real examples, real life examples that I've came through. So basically, I'll give an example of a corporate sector. We see most of the women, in a manager post. Not most, but yeah, in some places we see that women do, work as a manager. But when it comes to, decision taking, when it comes to implement those decisions or plans or idea, that always been manipulated in the meetings, with the higher ones, the people who are in the dominant position. So basically what happens, that you present the idea over there, and then they come up with, no, we cannot go with that approach because we don't think that it will work, because we have a much higher idea, or we have much more experience than you have gained in this arena, so we just go with another way. And that way they manipulate the decision or the idea or the whole concept that you have come up with. So basically, what happens in politics also, you see, when a women come up with any idea, it has always been manipulated in some way or the other. By saying it that you don't have much of an experience, or you don't have a right approach to approach the people. So basically, what they do, they create an illusion that women is in power. Women has the power to take the decision or implement certain things, but she doesn't have the power. Even now, if we see in the real life, women are being structuralized in an ideal women. In an ideal structure. In an ideal structure where she have to perform certain roles, certain ideal women roles, and if she come out from that ideal women role, or she plays certain different things, or out of the box things she do, um, let's say she broke some certain this patriarchal rules, then she is being categorized as not being ideal women. So basically what I'm trying to convey through my point of view is that we have an illusion that today women, not even women, even some men who come from the marginalized society or from the marginalized sector, face this inequality, even in the politics, even in the journal life. They face this inequality because of their less of they don't have that much of power to dominate certain ideas or present themselves in the society. So it's not only about women, but even about the people who are marginalized, who have no power, who come from certain caste that means tabooized by I society, that these people cannot contribute to certain things, or contribute in the society in such a manner that that can become a big thing or a big rule in the world. So that's the thing that I came up with.
Thank you for your remarks on this. I'll stop here for making something from my side, is that we'll be talking about this thing in the continued part after this, where we will talk about the possible solutions, if in real we mean it, that is feminism or women empowerment, or a gender-based study of IR, or gender perspective about IR, or about politics, or about society, and much more. I stop here and take a break for that. We'll be meeting on the other side. Until then,